Caris Levert is such an underrated player. Caris Levert is one of those players who always does good things when he's on the court, but he doesn't really get talked about. I mean, everywhere that he's been, he's had an impact on the team. When he was in Brooklyn, of course it wasn't just him. You know, Jared Allen started to break out, and D'Angelo Russell had that breakout season, and they made the playoffs that year. And they really kind of surprised the NBA, or showed them up in a way, because at the time, the Nets were known as being like one of the worst teams in the NBA. If you know, you remember, they did that trade for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and they basically traded away all their assets, all their picks, and it didn't work out, and it wasn't long after that they traded for them that they were off the team. So they had to rebuild from scratch with barely any picks or assets and stuff like that. And they ended up finding a gem in Caris Levert and Jared Allen, and they ended up, getting D'Angelo Russell, who at the time, his value was not, the best. By the way, D'Angelo's value wasn't like bad. He was still only a third-year player and of course a top draft pick, so he had potential, but it wasn't working out in LA. So anyway, back to the point, Caris Levert was part of that core who made the Brooklyn Nets relevant again, and he was one of the best players on that team. And I still maintain to this day, if Caris Levert had not gotten hurt, and that rhymed, but I didn't mean it to, I remember he was like, maybe it was in December or like November. It was like early-ish on in the year, but Caris Levert had been cooking everybody. Like, he was averaging, if I remember correctly, over 20 points per game, maybe even close to 25, and he was just giving it to every team every night. And I still maintain if he stayed healthy, he would have been an all-star that year. I think that's the same year that D'Angelo Russell was an all-star, but correct me if I'm wrong. Before, but the point is, Caris Levert, I still say he would have been an all-star had he not got hurt. I think he broke his foot or something like that. He was going crazy and he was playing like the best. And so his time in Brooklyn ends. He goes to Indiana, where he wasn't there very long anyway, but he still averaged over 20 in the games that he did play with Indiana, at least his first year there. So like, he was still showing the NBA world that he is a 20 plus per game every night scorer. But still he was getting like no recognition, because even though he was a 20 plus point per game scorer, the Pacers were not a top team and they were not getting a lot of coverage. But he was still cooking people when he was on the court. And so then he goes to Cleveland. And of course, they have Donovan Mitchell, which they didn't always have. They only traded for him a couple seasons ago. But even before that, Darius Garland was their guy of the future. And I still love Darius Garland's game. I think he's a very, very good point guard. And then, of course, his buddy, I don't know if they're friends, but I assume they're friends. His buddy Jared Allen is also on the team. And they have Evan Mobley. And like I said, they have Donovan Mitchell now. So with that whole roster, Caris Levert is kind of, the sixth man in a way. And so he doesn't get the touches or the, amount of shots that he was getting when he was on Brooklyn. And so that makes sense. However, if you watch Caris Levert, whenever Donovan Mitchell is out or Darius Garland, he gets the start, he goes off and he scores 20 plus points per game. So it's not that he can't do that anymore. It's that he doesn't have that role anymore. And being the scorer that he is, and he obviously can do other things besides score, but like his ability to score off the bench is so underrated for the Cavs. Because if you want to win in the NBA, you need someone who can come off the bench and instantly give you buckets and basically be able to get a basket on their own. What I mean by that is you need to be able to create your own shot, and he can do that. So his ability to create his own shot and make the defense work when he's on the court, while the starters, let's say Donovan Mitchell sitting on the bench and Evan Mobley, it's very important to the Cavs, and I feel like players like him don't really get the recognition that they deserve. Last year with the Cavs, he averaged 5.1 assists per game, and if you go and look at his, stats, by year, you would see that this is almost a career high for him. And so not only is he scoring the ball off the bench, he is getting his teammates involved and creating good looks for them as well. And he still has the quickness. Like, if you watch him play, you know that he can still get by people. So the point is, like, Caris Levert can do so many good things on the court, but yet, we're focused on, of course, the superstars, as we should be, because they put on a show every night. But it's players like Caris Levert that help their teams also make the playoffs, win games that maybe they shouldn't win, so to speak, because the starters are having an off night, and the bench unit, in this case Caris Levert, helps them get the win with his scoring, his assisting, his defense, whatever he's doing. I do think if Caris Levert was on a different team and he was a clear starter and maybe not even the number 1 option, but the number 2 option and got the second most shots on the team, I don't see why it's not possible that he could still average 20 plus points per game again. So that's why I'm saying his role kind of limits, his scoring. And it's not a bad thing because he's helping them off the bench. And on every team you have a different role. I'm just saying he could literally average 20 if he really wanted to. So that's why Caris Levert is so underrated, because he can do so much more than he is doing, technically statistics-wise, but he's still helping his team win and not even doing all those other things I said. So shout out to Caris Levert.